Everyone's still hanging in there? Okay, so this is a real marathon today. So good to be back here as ever. So what my husband and Hillel were talking about were the location of the temple, and more importantly, the purpose of the temple in helping us access the purpose that we have as human beings in this world. So in order that we are able to reveal the light of Hashem, connect with Him, have a real relationship in this world. So today I would like to take that on a little bit turn, but a connector. I'm sure, unfortunately or fortunately, as we will see, we all notice that crisis and suffering and tragedy is universal. Adversary punctuates almost every day of our lives, and there's no getting away from it. The fact is that, sometimes we go through so much that it takes us to the edge of our faith in ourselves, our faith in God, and, we end up asking ourselves questions like, is God listening? Is Hashem there with us? We are plagued with doubt. We're not good enough. We're not working hard enough. We're not praying hard enough. Where is He? And this, this is the stuff of our life. This is this is the reality, a daily reality for human beings in this world. So, when we get into this whole thing that, if we're suffering, if there's tragedy, God forbid, in our lives, crisis, adversary, we're challenged. When we get to these doubts and we begin to say, well, we can't be really very good. We can't be really very beloved. Well, we have a problem. Because the problem is, with this logic, we have to try to figure out what we do with the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Because they were beloved, and they were faithful, and they were also a showcase of suffering all the days of their lives. They did not have an easy moment. We're going through the book of Genesis. We do not have to stretch it or dig very deep to see what these giants went through during their lives. When we say, well, Hashem doesn't love us because He's not answering our prayers. When we say, maybe we're not praying hard enough and there's something desperately wrong with our prayers, then we have another problem. What do we do with Moshe? What do we do with Moses? In Numbers 12:7, right there, Hashem says, in all my household, Moshe is faithful. And we know Moshe had one request. That's it, one. He wanted to come to the land of Israel, and Hashem said no. He prayed, and Hashem said no. So it's not that he wasn't good enough. It's not that he wasn't faithful. Hashem says he's the most faithful in all his household. So there has to be more that's going on. If we use the barometer of a happy, easy, pleasant life, that means we're doing a good job. That means Hashem is here with us. That means He loves us. So then we have more problems. We have more problems. We look at a Joseph. We look at a King David, by all accounts, tormented his entire life. The Psalms, every Psalm just about attests to his struggle, to his conflict, to his torment. Hashem's chosen one for the Davidic dynasty went through every possible means of hell that anybody can go on in this world. So, the fact that there is suffering in this world, the fact that it's part of our daily life, the struggle, the adversary, the difficulties, the crises, one after another, I don't think there is no human being that is exempt from this. These questions that we have are not new questions about why. Moses himself asked this in Exodus 33 in verse 18. He said, show me your glory, please show me your glory. And the sages teach. What was he asking for at that time? He was saying, how could it be that in this world, the world of Hashem, there is such tragedy that good people suffer, that terrible, awful, brutal things happen in this world. That was the question, but it was a very nuanced question. It wasn't like, why me, woe is me. That wasn't the question. Lama in Hebrew is why. It was very nuanced. It was lima, for what? What is the function? What is the function of suffering in this world? So there's a purpose. There's a purpose. You know, why is it that suffering is an inescapable part of our reality as human beings in this world? So to back up for a minute, we know that everything, inanimate objects, everything, the animal kingdom, you know, there is something very, very tragic about something not fulfilling its purpose in this world. You know, even a musical instrument, you know, gathering dust in the corner, or fruit rotting on the tree, or I love animals, a seeing eye dog that's kenneled. Something not living up to its purpose is intrinsically tragic. And so everything has a purpose, and certainly, if everything in Hashem's world has a purpose, we as human beings have a purpose. So that means we are set into this world not to sit on the couch with the remote control, because that's a great fun, very relaxing, lovely, pristine. But no, we're not. This is not why we're in the world. There is a reason, and as they were talking about the reflection of the temple, helping us move toward our purpose, to connect with our purpose. The purpose, as my husband said it, I can't say it better, is Hashem bestowed himself on mankind so that through this material reality, we are able to uncover and attach ourselves to him through free will. And so that is why Hashem cannot be apparent, transparent, easily accessible in this world. Because if that were the case, there would be no possibility of connecting to him through free will, because it would be as if, you know, we were handed a relationship with Hashem. There would be no way not to have a relationship with Hashem, because it would be out there in our face in an inescapable way, and therefore free choice would be taken away from us. So every single thing in Hashem's creation is geared to reflect its purpose. That means us as human beings, we were not put here to be passive recipients, but rather we were bequeathed with a physical existence, a physical body, infused with the breath of Hashem, the tselem inside of every one of us. And we were given the job to uncover godliness in this world and connect to him. That's our job. Now, King David in Psalm 68, verse 35, says, Tnu oz le'elokim, which means give strength to God. Now, of course, this sounds bizarre. How do we give Hashem strength? How do we give Hashem anything? He doesn't need anything from us. And the sages teach us that how do we add to Hashem's strength, as it were? This is by Hashem planted the tselem, a piece of him inside of every one of us. So through our ability to connect to that piece of godliness inside of us and inside our environment, inside our experience, we are, as it were, revealing, uncovering, elevating, connecting, and as it were, adding strength to Hashem's presence in this world. So, you know, the main purpose of struggle in this world, you know, there are many purposes. The truth is, there are many purposes, and the fact is that the world that has been set up for us, human beings are accountable for their behavior, for their choices. So truthfully, in suffering, there's definitely an element of cleansing, of rectification, of atonement when we talk about suffering. But today I want to focus on a central purpose of the trials that we go through, the conflict and the suffering that we go through, the adversary, is the purpose being to shake us out of our limitations, to take us beyond the status quo, the comfort zone. Because within the comfort zone, it's a sterile ground. There's no potential for growth. That means we are what we are, and that's what we will be. We all know this from our lives. We don't want, every single day in the prayers we say Hashem shouldn't bring us to a test, and He shouldn't. And we don't want a test. We do not want to be tested. Nobody wants to suffer, and the purpose is not to suffer. The idea is that Hashem wants to help us to shake our complacency off, and use the contra in our lives, the adversary in our lives, as a place that provides the opportunity for self-examination. Now, without self-examination, there can be no change, there can be no growth, there can be no accomplishment. We are always reassessing. And unfortunately, or fortunately, as we will see, the hardship in our life is a shortcut to helping us reassess during the time that we spend on this world, so that we can move closer to our purpose as human beings. Now, Avraham, we're reading so much about Avraham the past few weeks, and we talk about tests. He's the one who's famous for being tested. We spoke about why specifically Avraham. We're not going to go into that today, why he was called the one that was tested, when clearly, the Tanakh is full of the tests of the sages. But in Genesis chapter 22, verse 1, it says right out there, no questions, no hints, just right out there, very bluntly, Hashem tested Avraham. Hashem tested Avraham. And at every turn, his life was upended. Every turn. We're not going to go into it. We're not going to go through it. But what we will see is that every single point in his life, there was a conflict between logic and what Hashem wanted from him. That means the confines of his own strength as a human being, his own intellectual capacity as a human being, and all of the tests took him beyond the confines of his logic. Now, what this served to do for Avraham was to allow him to be the trailblazer for Hashem, to bring Hashem's light back into the world for public consumption, offering it to people, sharing it with people, encouraging people. And because the trials themselves honed his emunah, his faith, he utilized it. It's a risk. Certainly when we suffer, there's a risk element because there are no guarantees, as we'll see. But he utilized it. He utilized the experiences of his life to be transformed. He made his humanity into a vessel to shine Hashem's light. And this did not happen to him inside his comfort zone. So famously it says, Lech lecha, go out for you. We know that the Torah is very, very sparse with wording. Lech lecha is double wording. It's extraneous. So there must be a reason for this. And of course, the famous Rashi, maybe many of you are familiar with what Rashi says about Lech lecha. He says, why double language? Lech lecha, go for you, for your good and for your pleasure. So the Lech lecha, the going out onto this journey into the unknown, when we look at the verses, Hashem did not tell him where he was going. He just told him, pick up, leave everything you know, leave everything behind, anything that's comfortable, anything that's familiar, everyone you know, and go, just go. I'll let you know where, but just start going. And Rashi says this was for his good and for his pleasure. So the good, we see that Hashem raises the bar. Raises the bar. He's the ultimate coach, forcing us to cope with situations so that we can uncover the richness of our own potential. Something we had no idea was there. We had no idea. Speaking to people, I'm sure your experiences, I'm sure what you've heard from other people, I certainly know from when I've spoken to so many people, that the trial brought out in them that which they did not know was there before. If it was utilized appropriately, of course, it runs the risk of turning us bitter, turning us away, because it is a test, because it is a choice. How are we going to take it? So for your good and for your pleasure, the pleasure of uncovering that potential. But it's very interesting. I found it very interesting because we talk about the word tzaddik. And tzaddik means a righteous person. And King David in Psalm 11, verse 5, he says, Hashem tzaddik yivchan. Hashem will test the righteous. Which means, if Hashem loves the person, if a person really, really wants a relationship with Hashem, He will not allow him to stagnate. The still water just sitting there, it looks nice the first day, the second day it's tranquil, it's beautiful. It begins to stagnate. Hashem will not let a person who is sincere stagnate. And that's why we see, very often we see beautiful people struggling, people that are sincere struggling. There's no human being that doesn't struggle because Hashem is offering these opportunities for us all the time. But so Hashem tests the righteous. Somebody who is sincere, wants that relationship with Hashem. But, then in Proverbs, King Solomon, in chapter 24, verse 16, he tells us what a tzaddik is. What is a righteous person? Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. What's a righteous person by Solomon's definition? It's the person that keeps falling down. 7 times a righteous person falls, v'kam, and he gets up. What makes a person righteous? The willingness to get up again and again and again after falling on your face again and again and again. The falling is human. There's no escaping it. It has a purpose to help us. But when we know that we are getting up, then we know that we are on the right track. It is the getting up. So it's a choice. It's a choice. God forbid we don't get up. But it's a choice. And it's what makes us righteous. It's what calls us righteous. So a crisis basically shatters the level that we were on before. And it stretches our perception of ourselves. And our perception of Hashem. Because we're in a certain place. We're on holding ground. And then the earth falls out from under us. So everything we knew is shattered. It's not there. It's sending us into this question about, if we use it well, what can I do with this? Not so much, why me, woe is me. That's natural, that happens, but we don't stay there. The deeper and more helpful question is, what can I make of this? What can I do with this? So we're forced always to choose. As my husband was saying, we're forced always to choose. This is how Hashem set up our world, because we have to be able to utilize the choices, and specifically the choices of things that we didn't ask for, we certainly don't want, realities that were foisted upon us, things beyond our control. We are forced to choose. Because the choice, the situation in which the choice is set up, basically forces us to confront what we had never confronted. It's a new chapter, it's a new stage, it's a new part of the journey. And it's very, very similar to the idea of Mitzrayim, Egypt. Meitzar is a narrow place, the constriction, the exodus from the constricted place. How do we get out of that constricted place? Not if we were happy there. Not if we don't call out in pain. Not if we were complacent there. The constriction itself sort of catapults us out. It catapults us out into another place. It causes us to yearn. It causes us to cry out, looking for Hashem, asking Hashem, where is He? It catapults us into looking into ourselves. What tools maybe do we have that we haven't been using or we don't even know we have to use? So, a very, very interesting thing. From the very beginning, those who we study together, we know I always like to go back to the Garden of Eden because that's where everything began and that's where we see everything set into motion. So even before Adam and Chava were on the scene, Hashem embedded into the creation process conflict. This predates humanity, conflict. What do I mean by this? Conflict between the pristine, harmonious reality as it were, Hashem perceived it and wanted it, versus the flawed, compromised, vulnerable reality of the what is. Hashem set the stage before He put mankind there so that because we will be living this and so that we could utilize this. Just to give you a few examples of what I mean. We all are familiar with the teaching that in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Elohim, of course, the divine name for judgment, the attribute of judgment, the letter of the law. And the very first Rashi in the whole Torah says that Hashem wanted to create the world in judgment, like everything on the mark, razor sharp, what is what is, judgment. But He saw that the world would not be viable, so He compromised and He added rachamim, He added chesed, He added loving kindness, mercy. He added that into the mix, like a second thought, as if. That's one example. The ideal versus the compromised. Another example, and we see this in chapter 1, verse 11, Hashem commands that the earth give forth eitz pri oseh pri. Hashem wanted that the earth would give forth a tree, eitz pri, a fruit tree, that makes fruit. Okay? Simple enough. The only thing is, when we skip down a few verses, and the Torah is very specific about language. We go to verse 16 immediately. We will go to verse 12 immediately following. We see that the earth did not give forth a fruit tree that bears fruit. Instead of eitz pri oseh pri, the earth gave forth eitz oseh pri. It sounds almost the same, but it's a world of difference. The fruit tree bearing fruit actually was created instead a tree bearing fruit. Hashem's original plan for the tree, the fruit tree, was that the entire creation of the fruit tree, there was no such thing as a non-fruit bearing tree before Adam and Chava ate from the tree. That's a side point, so that's why it's talking about fruit trees. That was a new creation that we actually brought into the world because, as we will see, the idea here is that Hashem wanted a tree, the creation. The purpose is entirely reflected in the creation itself. That means the original plan was that the bark, the leaves, the fruit all tasted the same, all tasted like the fruit, all reflected its purpose. But no, the earth pulled back, as it were. Again, these are deep lessons. These are not stories. That Hashem is infusing the creation with a conflict. So now there was something that did not reflect its purpose 100%. Okay, a part of that tree doesn't reflect its purpose. We see the same idea in verse 16 of chapter 1. It says that Hashem created the two large illuminators. And suddenly, by the end of the verse, it was one large and one small illuminator. They were not the two large, one large and one small. We will not go into that teaching, but we see the ideal versus the compromised, vulnerable, imperfect reality, Hashem's harmonious vision, and what is. Okay, so woven together is the vulnerability. This world contains vulnerability, and it reflects the conflict between what could be and what is. That's what we live, the conflict between what could be and what is. So Hashem programmed the world into conflict mode. That's how it is, even before we entered the scene. And again, this was a kindness to us, as we will see, because again, if our whole purpose is to reveal the light of Hashem, there has to be a pull, there has to be a conflict, there has to be a choice. So otherwise, we're accomplishing nothing, we're adding nothing, we are just recipients, emptily receiving and contributing nothing. So there's a very famous midrash. Before Hashem, again, as my husband said, these are not stories, these are deep ideas that are given over in ways that get our mind thinking so that we could learn very, very deep lessons. So the midrash says, before Adam and Chava were created, there was a whole hoopla with the celestial beings, and they were arguing among themselves, they were debating, is man worthy of creation or not worthy of creation? So it says that chesed, mercy, love, and kindness, vied with truth. And that justice vied with peace. They were arguing among themselves. Chesed, mercy, was an advocate. He said man should be created because man will do acts of loving kindness in this world. He deserves to be created. And truth said no. They do not merit creation because they will be riddled with falsehood. And then the skirmish continued, and justice said, yes, man should indeed be created because they will do justice. And peace denied it. They said, no, mankind will be full of discord. I think that this midrash very poignantly portrays for us the walking contradiction that is humanity. That it's all blended and mixed within each and every one of us. That we are capable of great, great things, and we are capable of very, very low things. We again, depending on where we choose to direct these potentials that we have. So not only was the rest of creation before mankind set up with conflict, setting the stage with conflict so that conflict could be utilized by us, by Hashem's creations, but Hashem himself created us with conflict. We know this. We know that what is a person? A person is the dust of the earth, infused with the breath of Hashem. That's the tzelem. Now, you don't get more conflict than that. Like, what are we exactly? Are we the dust of the earth, or are we godly beings infused with a piece of Hashem inside each and every one of us? And that's the whole beauty. Because we have a gravitational pull toward independence, that's the earthiness pulling us down. And then we have this tselem, this piece of Hashem, constantly pulling us up like a flame to reunite that spark with the harmony that is Hashem, that we are in Hashem's place, Hashem is not our place, to reunite. So we have this pull in our environment. Everything is created with this conflict. We have it within ourselves. Then we look and we see that the very first documented violence, in the world, of course, is the story of Cain and Hevel in chapter 4, verse 7. So we see as this, this is after Cain kills his brother Hevel. It says, surely, if you improve yourself, you will be forgiven. But if you do not improve yourself, sin rests at the door. Its desire is toward you, yet you can conquer it. Okay, so in Hebrew it's petach chatat rovetz. Okay, so we are sort of at this threshold of, some sort of like cliff where we could just fall down that cliff, but that we have the power and the responsibility to rise above that. So there's this inborn tension from the moment that we step into our first breath, that the stage is set. Everything about our creation, everything about the creative process is setting the stage for this conflict and for choice, again, so that we could choose Hashem, so that we could have a relationship with Him, and so that it means anything. It's like in Russia, the former Soviet Union, maybe they still do it now, I think they do. You're voting, but what do you vote? There's nothing to vote for. So what are you contributing? Where is your voice? How are you developing anything? There has to be. We must be in a world that appears dark. So crisis, therefore, is certainly a vulnerability, and we don't want to go through it, and it's always so hard watching people that we love go through it. But so this is a vulnerability, but I hope that I am making it clear that this is not an impediment only. It can be, and that's really up to us. But it's not only an impediment. It is actually our greatest asset as human beings. The fact that we are vulnerable, the fact that we are conflicted, the fact that we go through things, the fact that we fall flat on our face and have to get up. This is actually Hashem setting the stage to recreate ourselves, to become more than, to add to the creation. So when Hashem says to Cain, "Lepetach chatat rovetz," you are at this threshold, between falling away from Hashem. It's crouching there. Your humanity is crouching right there. Basically, it's two very important things. Hashem is acknowledging the fact that we have this challenge. He created us that way because He loves us, not because we're bad. He's acknowledging that we have this challenge, and He's also outlining His expectation of us for personal accountability. That we have to make choices, and there's no one to blame. We have to take responsibility. We did not ask for the details of our lives, and it's not fair. It just isn't. It's not equal. Everything is different. Everything is different. So it might not be fair, because that is not the purpose of our being in this world. The purpose of being in this world is to take the life that Hashem has given us, to bring out our personal fingerprint of light and connect that with Hashem. So we go through Hashem decides what we go through, but we decide how we are going to go through it. So, this asset helps us to seek out Hashem, to seek Him in a place that looks very, very dark at times, and unfortunately, pretty often. So, the events in our lives make it possible that a relationship with Hashem can be something real and not plastic and not immature. And we have to fine-tune ourselves, and we are getting to participate. We are encouraged to be responsible. We are contributing. We are adding to the creation. Excuse me. So if we say the trials and the conflict enable human choice, and we understand that it's a prerequisite for human growth, there's a very interesting idea. The Talmud tells us that Moses, initiated 3 things that Hashem liked. We know, that he agreed to the spies. That was not included in this basket of 3, that Hashem actually liked. And one of them was breaking the first tablets. Are you all familiar? Moshe comes down to this crazy scene after studying the Torah with Hashem to give over the Torah, and he gets to this place. he sees these people, that I've seen so many miracles just moments ago, practically days ago, are running around with this golden calf, and he breaks the tablets. Now, people make a huge mistake. They think that this was a fit of anger or a loss of control. I can't stand these people, boom. No, that's not what was happening at all. It was a purposeful, thoughtful, and loving act. What do I mean? Why did Hashem like this? Because the first set of commandments, like all the things we saw about the creation, represent the pristine, perfected state of reality as Hashem wants us to have as a goal. The shattered pieces of these tablets represent the fragile state of our existence in this world. Hashem put us here in He made us fragile. He made us conflicted. Again, not to torture us, but to help us be partners to Him. So He put us here to live in this fragile state with inevitable struggle, in a reality that helps us work toward our purpose. So when Moshe breaks these, it's out of compassion, because these shards are a reminder and a comfort. Because we are human. Moshe is saying, at the weakest time, I mean, there they are. When we go through things and we fall, there's self-disgust, there's despair. And Moshe broke them, and he said, you know what? We're people, we break. We mess up, we fall down, we disappoint ourselves, we disappoint Hashem, we can get very, very low indeed. But the struggle and the anguish that bore the shattering of our lives is actually also a trigger for the possibility of expansion and growth. So every crisis has a seed for something even greater. So the brokenness had a certain preciousness about it, and I'll prove it to you in a second. Because what is precious about it? It's just because it's a metaphor of our own humanity. And this is what allows us to elevate reality, because we participate in it, because we are actually part of it and not part of it simultaneously. So Moshe is signaling to his beloved people at the most insecure time. Because basically what happened with the golden calf, we're not going to go into that, but they were frightened, they were desperate, they were reaching for straws, they wanted a crutch, and there comes Moshe with the tablets, and they messed up so bad. They felt so bad. So Moshe is saying, when this voice of inner loathing hits, and we say, again, we're not worthy, we're not capable, we're beyond redemption, Moshe is saying, don't despair. This is the state of humanity, and not only that, when we look at the verse, it's so beautiful when you learn it in the Hebrew. Right after in Exodus chapter 33, verse 1, right after this whole mess, the verse says, Lech ale mizeh, go and rise up from this. Okay? So, we could say, okay, move on. But whenever the Torah uses the word zeh, this, there's many ways to say it. It means you're pointing at something that is visible. So, go up from this mess, this disaster, this disaster of your own making, this terrible mistake. Go up from this. But the wording is so beautiful because it's a command on one hand, and it's a reassurance on the other hand to a very demoralized people. And I think that is such a beautiful thing that talks to us, but we know it talks to us for all generations. How do we know this? There were several things that were stored in the ark. You may be familiar with this teaching. One was a jar of the manna, which represented, of course, Hashem sustaining us all the time throughout our life, through every situation. That really, there's an umbilical cord straight up to Hashem, despite whatever illusions there are in this world. The second one was the staff of Aaron, the dry twig which blossomed, and we could see very easily what hope that, the rejuvenation possibility that each one of us have, that, we think we're washed up, there's no life here, there's no possibility here, there's no hope here, but it blossoms. That's also in the ark. And you know what else is in the ark? The broken shards. The broken shards. You would think something that represented shame, something so terrible, such a terrible mistake, let's bury that, let's forget that. No, Hashem is telling us, elevate that to its proper place, as of comfort, of lesson, of an understanding that our frailty, our human frailty, is precious to Hashem, and it's also inevitable. We don't stay there. There's another set of tablets. We, rise up out of this, but it is precious. It is precious because of the fact that it's a tool for us to reach our purpose. Now, the word shever is an interesting word. We know, whoever of you study the Hebrew language, it's very descriptive. There are so many lessons just in the letters and the words. We always talk about this. So a shever means a break. Okay? In modern Hebrew too. My grandson just broke his arm. It's a shever, a break. Okay? So shin bet resh is the root. But there's something so beautiful that shever, a shard, also has another meaning, and we see it in chapter 42 of Genesis. I think I have it here. I'm not going to read it. I will tell you where it is. Chapter 42, verses 1 and 2. So what happens is there is a famine in Canaan, and Jacob sends his children because there's nothing to eat. He sends them to Egypt. He said, I heard that there's shever in Mitzrayim. There is shever in Egypt. What, breaking in Egypt? No. There is sustenance in Egypt. Identical word. Of course, we know that Joseph was called the Mashbir, the sustainer, because of his program for feeding the world at that time. And so you go check it out. If you know the Hebrew, chapter 42, verses 1 and 2, shever, it does not only mean to break, it also means to sustain. But again, there's already a connection here, because the breaks in our life are part of what can sustain us toward our purpose. Okay? And there's one other thing. Yoshevet al hamashber. Yoshevet al hamashber is a phrase. That's the word I'm looking for. Yoshevet al hamashber is a phrase which literally means to sit on the crisis, which means it's another word for childbirth. Yoshevet al hamashber. She's sitting on the crisis. It's a word. It's a term that means childbirth, and which is unbelievable because it is such a parable to what we are speaking about. Because, what out of intensity and pain and struggle becomes something totally new that was not there before. So literally birthing that crisis that is a struggle, that is a birth, brings us to a whole, adds to creation, brings something totally new out. So we have shards, breaks, sustenance, and birth. It's all the same word. It's a beautiful idea for us to take home. So Hashem believes that we are capable of using the brokenness to ascend. And everything that he sets up points to this. Now, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1, it says, Vayechulu hashamayim va'aretz, and Hashem completed the heavens and the earth. Now, and this is, we say this in Kiddush on Friday night, Vayechulu. It means to complete. The same exact root means, the same word means to begin. This is fascinating. To end and to begin is the identical word. If we think about it, Hashem ended, as it were, the 7-day creative process, and now began man's interface with Hashem and our contribution to that creative process. So there's another word that shares the same root, kli, vessel. So to end, to begin, and a vessel, a kli. So our job is to make our lives a vessel to fill with Hashem's will, Hashem's light, reflect it back into the world, and we are given every opportunity in our creation, in our environment, in our experience to make choices. We are given every single opportunity to make choices. So there's one more thing that Vayechulu means. So we said it means to complete, to begin, a vessel. It also means to destroy. Same word. Because it's really up to us. It's really up to us, and it reflects the days of our lives, which is this cycle, of endings and beginnings and breaking and starting over again and learning new tools and building ourselves up more and falling down again, getting to a certain place, having that peeled away, and a test that's even harder coming forward, because that is part of the creative process. So Hashem embedded, couched, into creation, this vulnerability, this tightrope that we walk as human beings, and he entrusts us to walk as human beings, because it's going to be up to us, because we have the power, are we adding or diminishing from the creation? Now there's something very, very beautiful. We just said, Vayechulu hashamayim va'aretz, and Hashem completed the heavens and the earth. So we back up, and the way the Kiddush starts, Yom Hashishi Vayechulu Hashamayim. We take those words, Yom Hashishi Vayechulu Hashamayim. We take the first letter of every one of those words, Yom, Yud, Hashishi, Hey, Vayechulu, Vav, Hashamayim, Hey, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Of course, this spells Hashem's name for mercy. Why is this so important? Because Hashem's name for mercy does not show up in the beginning. We see it only later. We are introduced, I believe, in chapter 2 to the divine name of mercy, but only after the creative process. But this is actually punctuating the creative process, so we see something very, very interesting here and very, very beautiful, that Hashem, the Elokim finishes the creative process. That means the divine judgment. And when we are suffering and we are in crisis and we are having hardship, we see, it feels like such judgment. It really does. And I don't want to minimize anyone's struggles, and people suffer an awful lot. So I hope everyone understands that I'm not trying to minimize suffering and make light of it in any way. But I'm talking about the purpose that we have in this world, and our ability to access our purpose through the things that Hashem puts in our life, starting with the world that we live in and our very bodies, not to mention all the experiences that we go through almost moment by moment. So couched into the creative process, even before Hashem actually overtly reveals the merciful side of the divine spark, he couches in the creative process. It's not visible, it's not apparent, but it's right there. Yom Hashishi Vayachulu Hashemayim. Hashem's name of mercy is right there. If you look, you have to look. So Hashem is unseen. We are entrusted but not abandoned. Okay? Now, and again, what we do matters, because everything we do adds to Hashem's light or diminishes from Hashem's light. Because we were put into a purposefully, perfectly imperfect reality. Because it's up to us to have something to contribute. If it was perfect, nothing. We could contribute nothing. And that includes who we are as human beings. We're not meant to be bystanders. We're not meant to be passive recipients. We are meant to discover and master ourselves and uncover the spark and bring Hashem into our world. Now, Hashem is coaching us to greatness all the time. So it's really up to us, because the things that come our way are up to us to translate. Are we translating? How are we translating what comes to us? How are we coping? How are we utilizing the trials, the hardships, the tragedies? What are we doing with them? What we do is very, very critical. So the idea that we know that Hashem is there in the creative process, hidden with us, entrusting us, giving us the tools, enables us to deal with adversary with dignity. Now, it says, at the end of every day, except for one day because he finished it on Tuesday, we're not going to go into that, but generally Hashem punctuates each one of his creative things with Vayar Elokim Ki Tov, and Hashem saw that it was good. There's a very interesting exception. On the sixth day, it says, Hashem saw everything that he did, at the end of the whole creative process, chapter 1, verse 31, Hashem saw et kol asher asa, everything that he did, and it was good. There's something that's glaringly absent. He didn't punctuate the creation of humanity, and he saw that it was good. Everything else, yes, not with that. It's very absent, because again, it depends on us. It's an unwritten story. It's an opportunity for us to write. It's an expectation for us to write. And then we read in chapter 5, verse 2, after Adam and Chava ate from the tree, it says, it reviews, and it says, Zachar and Nekeva, Hashem created them, male and female, and he blessed them, and he called their joint name Ha-Adam on the day that he created them. So he blessed, and that's what the verse says, chapter 5, verse 2. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them, and he called their name on the day that he created them Ha-Adam. I don't see a blessing here. It's not apparent. But there is. Because the blessing is the fact that we've learned that Ha-Adam means male, female together as one. So the very fact that we are called Ha-Adam, coming from the word Adama, which is earth, that is the blessing. Because the very fact that we are earthbound, earthy, functioning in this world, in a material world, is the blessing. Because only here in this material world can we choose to turn our Adama, our earthiness, into Adameh, it being a likeness. A likeness. I can be like Hashem only in this world, because I have this creative process of what I am going to do with my unfinished story. So my soul alone can't do it. I need the contra of a body to make it happen. So we know that a nisayon is a test. A nisayon is a test. And a nes is a flagpole, because a test allows us, if we use it properly, to raise ourselves up. And just one last idea, that when they are getting their blessing, Hashem says, and on the day that he created them, Vayikra et Shemam Ha'adam. And it means that he called their name Adam, but it can also be used as future tense, because it is couched into our being called Ha-Adam is unseen and unknown. It's in the future. Because it's up to us how we struggle and what we do with ourselves and with our environment, and with making us worthy of the creation. So I thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here, and you're all so precious to us, so I thank you very, very much.